The cardiac cycle depicts a chain of events occurring in every heartbeat, with a cycle lasting 8 milliseconds. Before we dissect each phase of the cycle, we must talk about pressure, as it plays an important role in blood flow between chambers, as blood moves from higher to lower pressure, but also through the pressure gradient regulates the opening and closing of the valves. We can divide the cycle into 3 phases. The first phase being atrial systole, which is the contraction of the atria that is triggered by a depolarization of the SA node, represented by the P wave on the ECG. The contraction increases pressure on the blood, pushing it through the AV valves into the ventricles. As contraction finishes, atrial pressure drops, inverting the pressure gradient and by thus closing the AV valves. The closing generates the S1 sound and marks the beginning of the second phase, ventricular systole. This phase has 2 parts, with first of all isovolumetric contraction, where a depolarization of the AV node, represented by the QRS complex on the ECG, triggers contraction of the ventricles. For a small period, the SL valves are closed, and since all 4 valves are closed, no blood is ejected and the ventricles contract with the same blood volume. Then we have ventricular ejection, and as contraction increases, ventricular pressure becomes superior to aortic and pulmonary pressure, causing the SL valves to open and pumping blood out of the ventricles. Following that, we have a ventricular repolarization, represented by the T wave on the ECG. The third phase is relaxation phase, with first of all isovolumetric relaxation, where a ventricular repolarization initiates the ventricular diastole, and as pressure in the ventricles decrease, there is a black flow of blood, closing the SL valves and generating the S2 sound. For a brief period, ventricles relax with the same blood volume as all 4 valves are closed. Then we have ventricular filling, where the ventricular pressure is inferior to the atrial pressure, causing the AV valves to open and allowing blood gathered in the atria during ventricular systole to naturally flow back into the ventricles, and by thus we have a new cardiac cycle that starts.
Created using Powtoon.